The grand hall of the Zerthian space station was a marvel of shimmering alloys and glowing panels. Jack Carter stood at the center of the vast chamber, feeling both out of place and oddly empowered. The alien architecture towered above him, intricate designs reflecting the ingenuity of a species that had achieved so much, yet here he was, an Earth archaeologist, standing with a collection of ancient tools draped across an elongated table. "Are you sure those are fit for display, human?" chuckled Zyrol, a tall Zerthian with shimmering blue skin and large, expressive eyes. His laughter resonated through the chamber, causing several other Zerthians to join in. "Yeah," added Zenra, a slender figure with a crown of iridescent tendrils. "What can you possibly teach us with those relics?" "Plenty," Jack replied, forcing a smile as he arranged his tools. "These are more than just relics, they hold the ingenuity of humanity's past, a record of survival and cleverness." He held up a flint knife. "For example, this simple tool was a game changer. It allowed our ancestors to hunt and gather, laying the foundation for civilization." Zyrol's laughter faded, but the skepticism in his expression remained. "You think a rock can help us? How quaint." As Jack prepared to demonstrate, he caught a glimpse of Lyra. She was different from the others, a brilliant engineer with her own share of doubt, but also a glimmer of curiosity in her eyes. Her vibrant purple skin shimmered under the artificial lights, and her cloak billowed gracefully around her slender frame. While others laughed, she seemed to take Jack's words more seriously. "Let's see what you have then," Lyra encouraged, stepping slightly forward. "We might learn something." The hall quieted as Jack seized the opportunity. "Thank you, Lyra. Everyone may lighten up your judgment for a moment." He began demonstrating various ancient tools, employing simple but effective techniques he had studied for years. "Observe this hammer," Jack said, holding it up with a certain flair. "Its design may look rudimentary, but it represents humanity's understanding of leverage and force. It's built to last, it's effective." Zyrol leaned forward, crossing his arms skeptically. "We have machines that can do the work of 100 of those. Why should we care about what you consider ancient?" Jack's gaze flickered with determination. "Because sometimes the simplest tools are the most effective. When technology fails, as it often can, it's the ingenuity behind these tools that can get you through." Lyra's expression shifted. "He has a point. Advanced technology depends on systems that can be compromised. If we ever face an energy crisis, wouldn't it make sense to understand simpler solutions?" Zyrol scoffed but seemed less enthusiastic about his laughter. He looked at Lyra, unsure how to respond, but Jack noticed the conversation had turned. "Exactly. Think of it as a backup plan," Jack added. "Backup plans?" Zyrol narrowed his eyes. "Do you expect us to face codgers swinging these rocks at problems?" Jack took a breath, shifting the atmosphere. "Perhaps not swinging, but using them wisely." He picked up the flint knife again. "If a vital system fails, why not use a primitive blade to perform basic repairs?" "Repairs?" Zyrol interjected. "You believe we would call upon tools made of dirt and plant life?" "Not dirt, Flint, and plant life has been the basis for countless innovations. Medicines, tools, structures. They stem from understanding nature," Jack retorted. Lyra stepped closer, her curiosity piqued. "Can you show us how it works? Maybe there's something eerie or enlightening in human design." Jack focused on Lyra. "Absolutely." He grabbed an old piece of wood and demonstrated how to make a simple spear. This design allowed our ancestors not only to hunt, but also to defend themselves against larger predators. Zyrol scoffed but didn't interrupt. The mood had shifted. Other Zerthians now watched with budding interest. "Why would we need to hunt?" Zyrol said, though he was beginning to appear more engaged. "Our food sources are synthesized in the lab." "True. But consider this, if a tech failure ever left you stranded, how would you defend yourselves or find sustenance?" "Think of the lessons learned," Jack emphasized, enjoying the newfound momentum. Lyra nodded in understanding, and then a smile teased at the corners of her mouth. "We might not have the same threats, but our core is similar, isn't it? Survival. Innovation." "Precisely," Jack exclaimed, encouraged by Lyra's enthusiasm. "This is about understanding what makes us resilient, even when our technology breaks down." "Now, who wants to try?" A few Zerthians stepped forward, and Jack directed them gently as they attempted crafting rudimentary spears. Laughter began to echo through the room, albeit a different kind, more curious and less mocking. "Not bad at all." Lyra observed as she brandished a makeshift spear of her own. It feels alive. Exactly. Imagine the history that comes with it, the stories behind the craftsmanship. Jack grinned. Zyrol now stood with arms crossed but was no longer laughing. Maybe there's merit to your claims, human. Your creations reflect a certain passion. Jack's grin widened. Thank you. It's all about connection. As the demonstration continued, conversations sparked, opinions shifted. Jack could feel the bond between him and Lyra strengthening. Their shared interest in innovation began to blossom into mutual respect. Lyra approached him as the others were absorbed in practice. You have something really special here, she said, a hint of admiration in her tone. Thank you, Lyra. Coming from you? That means a lot, Jack replied, feeling a warmth in his chest. She looked up at him, her eyes reflecting an earnest curiosity. You've made a simple day into an important lesson. There might be more to this ancient wisdom than I thought. Jack found himself drawn in. Maybe we can explore more together? Their eyes locked in a moment of shared understanding, lingering just a heartbeat too long before the moment passed. Carefully brushed aside as Zyrol called for attention. Jack smiled, filled with a sense of accomplishment. The hall that once echoed with laughter had transformed into a space of learning. Whatever uncertainties lay ahead, tonight he had ignited a spark, both with his ancient tools and with Lyra. The Zerthian journey, it seemed, was just beginning. Chapter 2. A crisis unfolds. The atmosphere within the Zerthian space station was uncharacteristically tense. Bright lights flickered ominously as alarms blared, drowning out the usual hum of activity. Jack Carter stood in the same expansive hall where he had presented his ancient tools only the day before, but now a sense of urgency filled the air. What's happening? Jack asked, turning toward Lyra, who was frantically flipping switches on a control panel nearby. Total failure in the energy core, she shouted over the noise. We've lost all primary systems. If we don't act fast, we could lose the entire station. Jack's heart raced. Can we fix it? There's no time for doubt, Lyra said, her face a mask of determination. But we need to get to the bridge. That's where the main conduits are located. She motioned for Jack to follow her. As they sprinted down the gleaming corridor, Jack could feel the station vibrating beneath their feet. Zerthian crew members rushed past them, their expressions filled with concern. Zyrol caught sight of them. What are you doing here, human? This is no place for you. I may be just an archaeologist, Jack replied, catching his breath. But I might be able to help. Lyra shot him a puzzled look. You really think your tools and knowledge can help in a crisis like this? I've seen plenty of disasters back on Earth, Lyra. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the most effective. Together, they continued towards the bridge. As they reached the heavy doors, which strained under the pressure of the failing systems, Jack pushed against them. We have to open these. Lyra jumped in, using her strength along with Jack's efforts to force the doors apart. The room within was dark, illuminated only by the emergency lights flickering erratically. A wide panel filled with incomprehensible data loomed before them, glowing ominously. Is there any backup power? Jack asked, scanning the room. Yes, it's operational but severely limited. We need to reroute some of it to the core, Lyra answered, getting a handle on the interface. But before she could make any adjustments, the panels flickered and the room filled with a mechanical growl. Get to that console, Zyrol ordered, pointing to a terminal in the corner. If we can stabilize the core somehow, we might divert power there. Jack nodded, bolting to the terminal. I can handle this. He scanned the display, trying to make sense of the alien symbols and diagrams. I'll need your help to translate these, he called back. Lyra dashed to his side. Right, let's start. Together, they began to work quickly, inputting combinations of commands as the power fluctuations threatened to shut everything down. Here, what does this symbol mean? Jack gestured to a series of lights blinking ominously. It's indicating a critical failure in the cooling systems, Lyra explained quickly. If we don't address that, the core will breach. We only have a few minutes. Then let's reroute the cooling systems through the emergency reserves. Jack's fingers danced over the console, trying combinations as he frantically reviewed the data. Zyrol stood by, watching with a mix of skepticism and reluctant admiration. "This is madness," he murmured, but he couldn't help taking a cautious step closer to evaluate their progress. Lyra focused. "Use that ancient logic you talked about. What did our ancestors do when they lacked technology?" "Utilized basic principles," Jack replied, recalling old Earth texts. "We need to focus on balance and stability. We can mimic that in this system." "But how can you?" Zyrol began, but Lyra cut him off. "Let him think, Zyrol. You're not helping." With a determined breath, Jack pulled a caliper tool from his pocket, a small but effective instrument. "Sometimes you need perspective. Rerouting power isn't just about the technology, it's about ensuring a proper flow. I'll create a diagram using this to visualize the setup." "Diagram?" Zyrol echoed, brow furrowing. "What does that accomplish?" "It lets us see faults in our understanding before we implement them," Jack replied, already sketching formations on a small datapad. As he sketched, Lyra watched intently, absorbing his method. "Using visual aids, I see," she said, nodding. "I use holograms often. It stabilizes our thought process." "Exactly," Jack replied, excited by their synergy. "Focus, both of you." Zyrol snapped, the pressure intensifying as alarms blared. "We need to act now." "What can we do?" Jack hesitated, his hands trembling for a moment, uncertainty creeping in. But as he glanced at Lyra, he drew strength from her unwavering determination. "We can try implementing the changes I outlined. It's unorthodox, but it may work." "Are you both insane?" Zyrol interjected. "Have you lost your minds?" "Right now, we have no choice." "Can you assist?" Jack snapped back. "Find the cooling conduits while Lyra and I coordinate our commands." Zyrol sighed, but he nodded and dashed to the panel as Jack and Lyra worked together. They rattled off commands, diving into intricate calculations as the room vibrated with power fluctuations. Minutes passed, or was it hours? The alarms grew more insistent, and outside the room, tension mounted. Jack could feel Lyra's shoulder brush against his as they hunched over the console, working in perfect synchronization. "Now, input that final sequence," Jack called, his heart racing. "Doing it." Lyra responded, her fingers dancing over the alien symbols. They both glanced up just as the lights began to flicker, stabilizing momentarily. Come on, Jack muttered, clenching his fists. Suddenly the display shifted, glowing brighter as a central node stabilized. "Your algorithm worked," Lyra exclaimed, eyes wide with excitement. "Wait, we're not through yet," Jack cautioned, pushing them both to the limit. The ground shook as energy surged through the conduits. The darkness was being pushed back, and Jack found himself grinning. Hope was spilling in with that singular display. Zyrol stood back, watching in awe as the core began to stabilize. "You did it," he finally said, incredulity evident in his voice. "You're both geniuses." Just then, a loud clang echoed from the outer hall. The ground shook violently, leading to another wave of alarms ringing throughout the station. "What now?" Lyra asked, her eyes wide. "I'm not sure," Jack replied, concern flashing across his face. "But we need to fortify the core once more. Can we redirect emergency power to the outer sectors?" "Definitely. We'll need to move quickly," Lyra said, determination returning. "Let's do it," Jack urged, confidence restoring itself, and together they pushed forward, ready to tackle whatever came next. And for the first time, Jack felt a presence beside him, not just Lyra's companionship, but the bond of their combined efforts. It was just the start, and yet it promised something profound. United, they would face what lay ahead. Chapter 3, An Unlikely Alliance. The tension in the Zerthian space station had transformed into a buzz of frenetic energy as Jack and Lyra stood side by side in the bridge. The alarms had quieted, but their mission wasn't over yet. They were still stabilizing systems that had gone awry due to the ongoing energy crisis. Zyrol, check the oxygen levels in Sector 5, Jack directed, glancing at the data scrolling across the translucent console. "We need to make sure it's safe for the crew near the outer hull." Zyrol, still recovering from the earlier dramatics, nodded and moved toward another terminal. "Understood. Although, I must say I didn't expect to be taking orders from a human." Jack shot him a half-amused look. "Welcome to the future. Maybe we can teach each other something." Lyra attempted to suppress a laugh but failed. "Oh, this dynamic is delightful. Now let's get to work, shall we?" "Right," Jack replied, refocusing. "Lyra, can you assist with the atmospheric controls? We'll need to shift pressure if we're going to manage the energy output." "Of course," she replied, stepping closer to him, her presence grounding as they both began shifting through diagrams and data. "What are you looking for?" "I need to analyze how the energy flows through the station." If we can limit pressure in areas still functioning, we can create a buffer for the systems at risk. Sounds reasonable. You'd fit right in as a Xerthian engineer with that way of thinking, she said, her voice warm. Thanks. Although I'm not sure this is as good as my presentation on ancient tools, he joked, grinning at her. Lyra placed a hand on her hip, raising an eyebrow. You might be underestimating your capabilities, Jack. Xyrol returned just in time, a mixture of disbelief and admiration on his face. Oxygen levels are stable, but I don't understand how you two can juggle concepts like this so easily. You're humans. You're primitive. Jack chuckled, glancing at Lyra. Primitively effective, perhaps. You should listen to him, Lyra added, crossing her arms. Some of our technology may be advanced, but even we have fallen short of practical understanding at times. Innovation often comes from the simplest solutions. Xyrol frowned, still processing. You imply that chaos in creativity is valuable? Exactly, Jack interjected. Nothing useless comes from creativity. It's just about finding potential. Now, how are you handling those oxygen levels? As they continued to work, they settled into a rhythm, a synchronized effort to maintain control of the station. Jack monitored the data, intently focusing on Lyra's movements. This sequence, Jack said, calling her attention. If we adjust those filters, we could maximize air quality and reduce energy consumption, making sure we're conserving everywhere we can. Lyra nodded, her fingers dancing over controls with precision. That's brilliant. I'd never thought to approach it from that angle. Xyrol watched them gradually inching closer. Did you learn all of this from ancient tools? Sort of, Jack said, feeling a grin creeping onto his face. It's about adapting old methods to new situations. If we moved backward a bit, we might realize that ingenuity is universal. I'll admit, I'm starting to see the logic in your reasoning, Xyrol said, cautiously intrigued. Let's put that logic to the test, Jack encouraged. We need to put all our ideas on the table. If we pool our knowledge, we stand a better chance of saving this station together. Pooling knowledge, yes, Xyrol echoed, pondering. Perhaps we are underestimating human adaptability. Lyra clapped her hands, her enthusiasm infectious. Well, let's see what we can come up with. We've already started combining techniques. The three of them settled into intense focus, pushing aside any reservations that plagued them. As Jack began explaining more about early human engineering techniques, he noticed how Lyra leaned closer each time they exchanged ideas. What about this? Jack suggested, showing a diagram of a makeshift energy diversion he had sketched out. We can create a pressure relief valve by using these principles. Lyra moved in for a closer look, instinctively brushing her hand against his arm. I see what you're doing here, using basic mechanisms to solve our higher-level problems. Xyrol leaned over the terminal beside them, raising an eyebrow. I have to admit, I'm impressed. You make it sound deceptively simple. It's simple in concept, Jack replied, but executing it is what counts. We have to create a balance. If we fail now, we could endanger everyone on board. Lyra nodded, her brows knitted in concentration. Let me try connecting these two pipelines with the materials we have. She pulled up a 3D projection of the station, manipulating it with deft motions. Good idea, Jack encouraged, feeling a thrill of teamwork coursing through him. We can manipulate gravitational forces to direct the flow better. Xyrol observed, a light of realization dawning in his eyes. You've changed my perspective, both of you. I was raised to think of Earth solutions as inferior, but perhaps we need to rethink our definitions. Defining things leads to limitations, Jack remarked, recalling the lessons from his past. A tool is just a tool until you redefine its purpose. Very wise, Lyra said, glancing at him with admiration. Let's keep building on this synergy. Minutes felt like hours as they worked in tandem, ideas bouncing back and forth. Jack felt exhilarated. This was the kind of cooperation he had dreamed of. Laughter mixed with serious discussions, and before long, they had assembled a detailed plan to address the energy crisis. As they finalized their strategy, Zyrol spoke up again. If we implement this and SCHD, we may need to reconsider the significance of ancient technology in our future operations. Jack locked eyes with Lyra, and they both smiled in unison. That's exactly why we need to keep an open mind, Jack said. You're both incredible, Zyrol confessed, a reverent awe breaking to Jar. Create an alliance, one that mixes our advancements with your basic methods. And by ally, you mean I'll get to visit your engineering labs? Jack asked with a playful grin. You will certainly have a tour, human, Zyrol said. But let's first ensure that you both make it out of here in one piece. They shared a united laugh as they approached the next phase of their plan. Standing together, the trio felt like a new force, different backgrounds blending into something compelling. Only a short while ago, Jack had felt like an outsider, but now he found himself right at home among them. Let's do this, Jack declared, excitement bubbling within him. Let's redefine what's possible. With renewed energy, they marched forward, ready to tackle the next challenge together. Jack had no idea how far the friendship would stretch, but he welcomed the uncertainty woven with hope and camaraderie. Chapter 4, The Turning Point. The atmosphere inside the Zerthian space station had settled into a shared purpose. Energized by their recent progress, Jack, Lyra, and Zyrol gathered in the bridge once more, ready to tackle the critical adjustments they had outlined in their plan. All right, team, what's our first move? Jack asked, pacing slightly as he his hands together. Lyra scanned the console before her, the holographic display flickering in response to her touch. We need to implement the cooling adjustments first. If we don't manage the temperature of the core, everything else is moot. Zyrol, can you handle the data and initiate the first phase of our plan? Jack suggested, eyeing the Zerthian expectantly. Are you sure you want me handling the calculations? Zyrol replied, crossing his arms skeptically. It's quite a leap from ancient tools to managing our energy core. Absolutely. You've been doing an excellent job so far, Lyra said, offering him an encouraging smile. Besides, we're relying on your expertise here. Zyrol hesitated for a moment, finally giving a reluctant nod. Very well, I will check the calculations again. You two focus on the auxiliary systems. Jack turned back to Lyra, who was engrossed in adjusting the core's energy output. I think we can do this. Just like we did before. Together. Together, she echoed, her eyes brightening. As Zyrol moved to his terminal, Jack joined Lyra at the holographic projection, the data flowing through like a river of numbers and diagrams. Let's take this step by step, he suggested. What needs adjusting first? This section here, Lyra indicated, pointing to a series of control panels projected in bright blue. It regulates the waste heat from the core. If we balance it, we can keep everything functioning smoothly. Jack leaned closer, nodding as he processed. Okay. So, we need to implement a feedback loop right here. Have you ever used a similar system in your technology? Lyra's brow furrowed for a moment as she thought, then replied, yes. We typically use it for stabilizing various systems, but I think taking a page from your book could help us simplify it. Let's make the programming less convoluted. Then let's prototype together, Jack said enthusiastically. How often do I get to say I'm working on a Zerthian system? A smirk curled on Lyra's lips. Only once, apparently, and if we survive this. Now let's get to work. As they both entered commands, the flickering lights above them ramped up, creating an almost theatrical atmosphere that amplified their excitement. Zyrol, how's it coming? Jack called, glancing over at the Zerthian. Calculations are in progress, he shouted back, pressure evident in his voice. They are, he paused, staring intently at the screen in front of him. They're adjusting now, but these calculations, something feels off. Off? What do you mean? Jack asked, shifting his attention back to Zyrol. I'm comparing them with our previous models, but I'm getting discrepancies, Zyrol said, frustration creeping into his tone. It's as if the energy levels are fluctuating unexpectedly. Could it be a result of the initial destabilization we went through? Lyra interjected, leaning toward Zyrol. That could affect the readings. Potentially. Let me cross-check, Zyrol murmured, tapping away furiously at the console. In the meantime, we can continue to streamline the cooling system. Lyra, if we implement a low-pressure buffer zone in the cooling conduit, will that help? Jack proposed. Absolutely, she replied, nodding vigorously. It allows for better distribution of energy. Jack shared a moment with her, excitement igniting in his chest. Let's make it happen then. As they worked, moving towards a solution, Jack couldn't shake off the electricity in the air, both from the station and between them. The more they collaborated, the more it felt like they were reshaping their destinies together. All right, here we go. Zyrol suddenly exclaimed, his voice breaking Jack's train of thought. I have the new calculations ready and they seem to be stabilizing. Great. Jack, can you start integrating them into the system? Lyra suggested, her eyes filled with eagerness. Jack moved swiftly to Zyral's console and reviewed the calculations. These look solid. Let's apply them right now. Okay, on 3, Lyra began, her hand poised over the command key. 1, 2, 3. They pressed the buttons simultaneously and the whole room lit up with a cascade of shimmering colors as the energy core's readings began stabilizing. The alarms surrounding them fell silent, replaced with a smooth, steady hum. Did we actually just do that? Lyra breathed, her eyes wide with disbelief. We did, Jack exclaimed, unable to suppress his excitement. We've stabilized the core. Zyral threw his arms up in exhilaration. I can't believe it. You too, this is astonishing. Lyra turned to Jack, her expression a mix of surprise and admiration. You really have a knack for solving problems. Just doing what I can, Jack shrugged, unable to conceal a grin. But it was a team effort. As they celebrated, the atmosphere took on a lighter tone. Laughter bubbled between them and Jack felt an undeniable bond forming with both Lyra and Zyral. Now that we've tackled that, Zyral said, running a hand through his hair. Let's discuss what's next. We should reinforce the external integrity before we face any potential breaches. Jack nodded, feeling a renewed sense of focus. Agreed. Lyra, do you have any suitable blueprints for the reinforcement? Yes, I do, she said, her excitement bubbling again. I think we can bolster the outer hull using those scanners we've been keeping at the base of the station. Excellent, Jack said, stepping closer to her. Let's figure out how we can integrate that into the current flow of energy. As they began plotting their next move, Jack felt Lyra's presence grow increasingly warm, a palpable tension swirling between them. Zyral cleared his throat, breaking the moment. Shall we work on this while we still have momentum? Of course, Lyra said quickly, refocusing herself. Just a moment, she navigated back to the schematics as Jack felt a lingering sense of exhilaration. All right, Jack said, pushing everything aside. Let's figure this out together. Hours seemed to vanish as they worked through details, fine-tuning their approach with a blend of determination and enthusiasm. As they collaborated, it dawned on Jack that this was precisely what he had been missing. Eventually, their combined efforts led them to a final plan, one that had potential to safeguard their station. All right, let's do one last review before we implement it, Zyral suggested, his brows furrowed as he scrutinized the new design. Jack and Lyra nodded, both feeling the weight of responsibility but also excitement. Finally, with a shared glance of encouragement, they proceeded to set their plan into motion. As Jack entered the final codes, he found himself stealing a glance at Lyra. Her focus was sharp, her brows slightly furrowed as she concentrated. In that moment, he realized that in their journey, not only had they forged a practical alliance, but they had also formed something deeper, a friendship, and possibly something more. With each passing moment, the seeds of trust and confidence were taking root, and Jack eagerly awaited what lay ahead both for the station and for their burgeoning connection. Chapter 5, A New Dawn. As dawn broke beyond the vast expanse of space, the Zerthian station shimmered under the soft light of distant stars. Inside, the hum of machinery had returned to normal and the tension that once gripped the crew had been replaced by an air of cautious relief. Can you believe we actually did it? Jack asked, leaning against a wall in the bridge, taking a moment to relish their victory. Lyra leaned over the console, her fingers tapping rhythmically. All systems are stable now, and the core is functioning like a charm. I'd say we've turned this place around. Zyral, pacing nearby, shook his head incredulously. Your understanding is unfathomable, human. Without the two of you, we would have certainly faced consequences. He paused, searching for the right words. What you brought was invaluable. Thanks, Zyral, Jack replied, feeling a swell of pride. But to be fair, we all work together. I couldn't have done this without you both. Lyra turned, her smile reflecting the light pouring through the windows. And now we can finally conduct a proper analysis of what went wrong. Maybe even prevent it from happening again. Speaking of analysis, Zyral interjected. We should look at those readings again. The initial fluctuations were unprecedented. Right, Jack said, moving to another control panel. Let's dig into the details and see what we can learn. Lyra joined them, her brow furrowing in concentration as they reviewed the data together. The numbers flowed like an intricate dance on the screen. Look here, Jack pointed out, tracing a line on the holographic display. This spike corresponds to the energy reallocation we made during the crisis. It's a lot more volatile than initial assessments suggested. Yes, and here, Lyra added, touching a different part of the data stream. These patterns emerged before the adjustments. They indicate a potential stress point that we should have addressed earlier. Xyral nodded thoughtfully. So our response effectively masked the underlying issue, rather than solving it outright. Exactly, Jack said. It's great we stabilized everything, but we need to go deeper. Let's create a new plan. Something that could prevent this from happening again. Lyra suggested. Together, we can investigate modifications to the existing systems. Jack smiled at her enthusiasm. Absolutely. And if we make these changes now, we'll be well prepared for any future challenges. Agreed. Xyral chimed in. Let's put our heads together and draft some proposals. As they delved into the analysis, the trio became engrossed in their task. Hours ticked by, and the deeper they dug, the more they realized the interconnectedness of all systems aboard the station. Did you hear that? Jack suddenly asked, breaking the focused silence in the room. Hear what? Lyra replied, looking up from her screen. The hum. It's different now, isn't it? Jack remarked. The machines seemed to be operating more smoothly. Lyra tilted her head, listening intently. You're right. It's almost harmonious. What if the changes we implemented had a larger impact? Xyral considered aloud. Maybe we've improved not just the core but the entire station. Now that would be something. Jack grinned, reveling in the possibility. Imagine if we could enhance the Xerthian way of life through our collaboration. I like the sound of that, Xyral said, excitement creeping into his voice. But we need to validate it before celebrations. Without missing a beat, Jack replied, absolutely. Data first, celebration later. Just then, a soft alarm chimed from the console, drawing their attention. Lyra quickly tapped a few buttons. What's this? It seems we have an incoming transmission, Xyral announced, his voice sharp with concern. Put it through. Jack demanded, feeling the tension return. A holographic image shimmered to life, revealing Commander Xerath, an imposing figure with sharp features and a commanding presence. Xyral, report on your status. I've just received word from the Council regarding your operations. Xyral stood straighter, trying to maintain composure. Commander, Is it true that a human has aided you? Xerath interrupted, skepticism lacing his tone. Yes, Commander, Xyral replied, stealing a glance at Jack. Jack Carter provided invaluable assistance during the crisis. Without him, we would have been overwhelmed. Xerath's expression hardened for a moment. And what made you trust this outsider? Jack stepped forward, unable to hold back. Because I saw what he and Lyra could do under pressure. Together, we formed a cohesive unit, leveraging our strengths to stabilize the station. The commander's gaze flickered between them. You believe a human can contribute to Xerthian operations effectively? Yes, Commander, Lyra chimed in, joining Jack. More importantly, his knowledge of engineering and fundamental principles has brought us together in a way I never expected. He's changed my perception. Xerath seemed taken aback by their confidence. Very well. You're advocating for collaboration. What capacity do you suggest we utilize Jack in moving forward? Xyral interjected, we propose an alliance that combines Earth ingenuity with Xerthian technology. Together, we can enhance our systems and avoid future disruptions. An interesting notion, Xerath replied carefully. But I require more than words. Conclusively demonstrate this collaboration's value. Jack stood taller, determination surging within him. We're ready to prove it. Give us the chance to demonstrate how well we can work together. Xerath studied him, then crossed his arms. So be it. Compile your improvements and present them to the Council. If they deem it worthy, I will consider further integrations. Thank you, Commander, Lyra said, her voice steady. As the transmission ended, Jack felt a mixture of excitement and anxiety wash over him. Did that just happen? Yes. Xyral exclaimed, his eyes gleaming. Now we have a path forward. Jack turned to Lyra, feeling the weight of the moment. We've got to work quickly then. Let's get our data organized and leverage everything we've been through. We need to present something compelling. I'll run the simulations, Lyra said decisively, moving over to the main console again. We can run all possible modifications and present the most efficient path moving forward. While you do that, I'll compile all our findings. Jack added, eager to contribute. As they rushed to their respective tasks, Zyrol chimed in. I'll assist in assembling the report. Let's be direct and precise. The council will need clarity to understand our successful collaboration. In that moment, as they divided their responsibilities, Jack felt a deep connection to both Lyra and Zyrol. They were not merely working together. They were forging a partnership rooted in shared purpose. Hours turned into a frantic blur of activity as they compiled data, finalized designs, and rehearsed their presentation. The buzz of creativity surged as confidence filled the air. Finally, as they reviewed their work for the last time, Jack stood back, feeling a sense of accomplishment. I can't believe we pulled this together. Lyra smiled brightly, the light of determination sparkling in her eyes. We should be proud. We didn't just survive. We thrived. Zyrol clasped his hands together. Tomorrow we will present this to the council, and once they see the potential of our alliance, everything will change. Jack looked at each of them, pride swelling in his chest. This is just the beginning, isn't it? Absolutely, Lyra said, leaning closer. Think of all the possibilities ahead. As they shared a moment of camaraderie, Jack felt a rush of excitement. Together, they were forging not just new paths in technology, but deepening connections that might redefine everything they believed. The dawn of a new era awaited them, and Jack knew one thing for sure. They were ready to face it, together.